But for now, Manu, before we get into the meat and bones of this episode, we wanted to bring up an interesting talking point. We like to use this intro as an opportunity to either discuss discussions in the forums on the website or some data that our data team have pulled up. And our colleague Ewan Robertson actually pulled up some really interesting data for an article this week on the single biggest market value rises for any player in the history of Transfermarkt. And we'll throw it up on the screen now for people who are watching this, for people who are listening to it at home. I'll quickly run through the top 10, Manu, and then we can maybe cherry pick our favourite ones. So there's 4 or 5 players joint on top 10 with a €40 million upgrade, but I'll go through a few of them. You've got Mohamed Salah at Liverpool in 2018. You've got Cole Palmer at Chelsea in 2024. Harry Kane at Tottenham 2018, Lautaro Martinez in 2019, and you've got Ousmane Dembele at Barcelona in 2019 as well. Then in 9th place, we have Ousmane Dembele again in 2017, who saw a €47 million upgrade in the market value in December 2017. Then above him in 6th place is Neymar when he moved to PSG in, what's that, August, I think, of October of 2017, who saw a €50 million upgrade. This month, we have Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, who moves into 5th place on the list with a €50 million upgrade, following, obviously a fantastic season. And for anyone who hasn't listened, a few episodes back, we spoke to Stefan and our French team about everything to do with the Georgian wingers. So if you're wondering why we're not discussing them today, it's because we did talk about him recently on the show. Just above him is Vinicius Jr, who also saw a €50 million upgrade in 2021 at Real Madrid. Just above both of them in 3rd place is Kylian Mbappé, who saw his market value increase by €55 million in 2017. Lionel Messi saw his on the same year increase by €60 million, but put him in 2nd place. But in 1st place, Manu, in 2018 is Mohamed Salah, who saw his market value increase from €80 million to €150 million, which saw it obviously increase by €70 million. Now, we've got a list of like 50 players on this list, so we obviously can't discuss all of them, but it really is a who's who, Manu, of the most impressive world-class players of the last 10, 15 years, isn't it?
It really is. And I mean, we can explain all of these updates because, of the things that happened on the field or the things that happened in regards of transfers, right? So, I mean, I looked at this list right away and I thought, wow, there's a lot of guys here from PSG. And in 2 cases, it's quite straightforward why the jump is so high. The Kylian Mbappé transfer at the time from Monaco to PSG for an enormous amount of money, right? That was a loan with an obligation to buy the following season, and it was in the 100 million plus range. So obviously that drove up Mbappe's market value. Not to say that he didn't deserve the upgrade based on his performances at the time. He was the most significant talent to emerge that year. That Monaco team that he was on went very deep in the Champions League. They reached the final, if I remember correctly, or the semi-final. That was obviously a really big factor. And then, of course, the same with Neymar. His €222 million transfer remains the biggest transfer in football history. And so, of course, we had to adjust. We don't always agree with the transfer fees paid, like only because a transfer fee was paid. We don't say like, well, that's his market value. We maintained at the time that PSG probably overpaid for a Neymar. And PSG, they triggered a clause that Barcelona thought wasn't never going to be triggered by anyone, right? The fee was so high that they thought they were safe. PSG went and did it anyways. And, so that's the jumps in market value right there. And then you have Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, who is also at PSG, but his transfer fee was not that high, right? This is a new era at PSG, and under Luis Enrique, their transfer business has been very different. They no longer pay huge fees for single star players. Kvaratskhelia was sort of on the leftover bin at Napoli when they signed him, right? And then emerged as the superstar player. So in his case, I would say it's pretty much almost performance-based.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just want to also raise some interesting players from the past, which I think might be a kind of welcome trip down memory lane for some people, because I've just gone, like I said, we've got a list of the top 200, I think I've got in front of me. And you can really go back. For example, Eden Hazard in 2018 got a 25 million euro upgrade when he was at Chelsea, which is the 122nd largest single upgrade. In 2004, Antonio Cassano at AS Roma. So his market value increased by 25 million euros, put him 117th. In 2004, equally 2004, the exact same update as Cassano, Rio Ferdinand joined with Cassano for 25 million euro upgrade. So he's sitting at 115th. You scroll up the list and we get to Chelsea. Two players in 2004 saw their market values increase by 30 million euros, and that was Ricardo Carvalho and Didier Drogba. Blast from the past for some Chelsea fans who are probably harkening back to better days perhaps at Stamford Bridge. And then we get into the top 20. Francesco Totti in 2004, so his market value increased by 35 million euros, which put him 18th. Wayne Rooney, market value increased by 37 million euros, so his market value, increased by 37 million euros in 2004. He's 17th. And then just above him with a market value increase of 38 million euros is Ronaldinho, who saw his market value increase by 38 million euros in 2000.
Can I just add a little note on there, though? Those might be first market values.
Yeah, I think they are, yeah. Because obviously many of them are like their first market value. So that was, I think, when our Transfermarkt started doing market values, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they would have already been in the Bundesliga, but 2004 is, I think, when they went international.
Yeah.
And some of these guys got their first ever market value. But still,
a bit of a kind of, technicality, but it goes to show perhaps how much things have changed over the years and how quickly market value can improve these days, and there's certainly some interesting ones there. There's maybe some concerning ones, or maybe ones that maybe hung over players a little bit. I'm looking at Antony in 13th place, whose market value increased by 40 million euros when he moved to Manchester United. Nick Voltemata in 21st, who saw his market value increase by 35 million euros when he moved to Newcastle for a large fee. And Hal Felix in 2019, sitting 22nd on the list when his market value increased by 35 million euros when he was on the cusp of really kind of breaking into Spanish football before leaving Benfica, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of players there who maybe didn't live up to the hype. Not as many, as you would think. A lot of players certainly deserve the hype that they got there, Manu. But it's a very interesting list, I think, as you said, of either showing where the big standout transfer fees came from in football history, but also perhaps where key players really kind of stepped up and became world-class players as well, I think. Because even in that top 10, as you mentioned, Kvaratskhelia, a perfect example of a player who's earned that market value increase because of his performances. Vinicius Jr. equally so. Mohamed Salah there too. Leonard Carl, who's 14th on the list for what he's done at Bayern Munich this year. Kevin De Bruyne as well in 2018. So a real kind of interesting mix of players who've either earned it through performances or I guess technically also indirectly earned it through transfer fees, which obviously, as we know, are a direct correlation to, the value that clubs put on those players based on how they've done on the pitch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or at least it should be. Maybe the exceptions that I named with Neymar. But the one that really stood out to me looking at it right away was Mohamed Salah, that 2017-18 season. So that update was in May. And Liverpool, they didn't win the title that year, right? They finished fourth. But I think that was the first full year under Klopp with his squad, right? Because he comes in mid-season the year prior, if I remember correctly. And so he started really building the momentum towards what ended up being a title win for Liverpool 2 years after. But his increase by 70 million euros. And I mean, what a purchase he was. They bought him for very little from Roma. And now he's, playing the final. Well, he's seeing out the final weeks of his contract. Expires, of course, on July 1st. And is headed to the World Cup. So, yeah. But the rise there is just enormous. 70 million euros is a significant increase in market value.
Yeah, I think in many ways you could say that was maybe the pinnacle of Salah's career because not just in terms of market value, but also in terms of what he achieved. That was his first year winning top goal scorer in the Premier League. First year winning Player of the Season at Transfermarkt, which is the all-important one, of course. He won the Premier League Player of the Season and then African Player of the Season as well. But as you said, went on to then win the Champions League with Liverpool the following year. And when I think basically right after the season where everyone's like, oh my God, this guy is a world-class player. How did Chelsea ever let him leave to go to Roma? And and as a result, his market value just absolutely skyrocketed, and I think understandably so. And he certainly lived up to the hype.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I was lucky enough to see him one more time live, not this season, the season before. And I think, that first year under Arne Slot, where they won the title as well, he was incredible too. But yeah, obviously about 8 years ago, he was at the pinnacle of his career. Yeah, what a player.